The rain stung Eli's face like 1,000 tiny needles, each drop a reminder of the night he'd been cast out. At 17, he'd stood on this same Wyoming street, shivering. His father's words, "You're no son of mine," cutting deeper than the cold. Now, 10 years later, Eli Parker was back, his boots heavy on the cracked pavement of Coldwater, a town that hadn't changed but felt like a ghost of itself. He wasn't here by choice. The letter in his pocket, creased and worn from countless readings, had dragged him back. "Come home, Eli. Your nephew needs you." Mom. No explanation. No apology for the decade of silence. Just a plea. And the weight of family he'd tried to bury. Eli's breath caught as he passed the old diner, its neon sign flickering like a heartbeat. That's when he saw him, Mr. Callahan, the man who'd saved him all those years ago, bent over a pair of scuffed sneakers, polishing them with the same care he'd once shown Eli's broken spirit. The sight stopped Eli cold. Callahan, now gray and weathered, was shining shoes for Eli's nephew, Tommy, a lanky 12-year-old with eyes too old for his age. The boy sat stiffly, his gaze fixed on the ground, unaware of the man who'd once given Eli a lifeline. Memories flooded back. The night Callahan found Eli sobbing behind the diner, offered him a hot meal, and drove him to a shelter 2 towns over. "You're enough," Callahan had said, his voice steady. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words had kept Eli alive through years of struggle hustling in Denver, scraping by, building a life as an openly gay man despite the scars Coldwater left. Now, standing in the drizzle, Eli's heart twisted. Why was Callahan, a man of quiet pride, shining shoes for a kid? And why was Tommy, his sister's son, here instead of with her? Eli's sister, Sarah, had stayed silent when their father kicked him out, her loyalty torn but never offered. The letter hadn't mentioned her, only Tommy. Something was wrong. Eli could feel it in the air, thick as the storm clouds rolling in. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across the diner's window. Callahan looked up, his eyes widening with recognition, then softening with something like relief. "Eli Parker," he said, his voice low but warm, like a fire on a winter night. "You grew up." Tommy's head snapped up, his gaze darting between them. "You know him?" the boy asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. Eli froze, unsure how to answer. He didn't know Tommy. Not really. Sarah had been pregnant when Eli left, and he'd never met the kid. But those eyes green, like Sarah, shelled a familiar pain, one Eli knew too well. "I used to," Eli said, his throat tight. "A long time ago." Callahan set the shoes down, wiping his hands on a rag. "Tommy's staying with me," he said, his tone careful, like he was navigating a minefield. "Your sister, she's not doing so great." Eli's stomach dropped. "What happened?" Callahan glanced at Tommy, who'd gone rigid, his hands balled into fists. "Not here," Callahan murmured. "Not now." The diner door swung open, and a woman's voice cut through the tension. "Tommy, you done yet? We gotta get home before the storm hits." It was Mrs. Hargrove, the town's self-appointed moral compass. Her lips pursed as she eyed Eli like he was trouble incarnate. She hadn't changed, still the same woman who'd whispered "sinner" when Eli's father dragged him out of church. Eli Parker, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Heard you were back. Stirring up trouble already. Eli's jaw tightened. But before he could respond, Tommy stood, his sneakers gleaming. He's not stirring anything, the boy snapped, surprising Eli with his defiance. Leave him alone. Mrs. Hargrove blinked, clearly taken aback, but recovered quickly. Mind your manners. Boy, you're not too old for a switch. Callahan stepped forward, his presence calm but unyielding. That's enough. Marjorie. He's just a kid. She huffed but backed off, grabbing Tommy's arm and pulling him toward the door. Tommy shot Eli a glance half curious, half guarded before disappearing inside. Eli's chest ached. This town, these people, this pine, it was all too familiar. Walk with me, Callahan said, gesturing toward the street. We've got a lot to catch up on. Eli hesitated, the weight of the past pressing down. He'd come for answers, but now he wasn't sure he was ready for them. Still, he followed, the rain soaking through his jacket, each step pulling him deeper into a story he'd tried to leave behind. The night air was thick with unspoken questions. Why was Tommy with Callahan? What had happened to Sarah? And why, after all these years, did Coldwater still feel like a wound that wouldn't heal? Eli glanced at Callahan, whose steady stride hadn't faltered despite the years. The man had been a beacon back then, a quiet ally in a town that turned its back. But now, seeing him humbled, polishing shoes for a living, Eli wondered what price Callahan had paid for his kindness. As they walked, the diner's lights faded behind them, and the storm grew louder, mirroring the turmoil in Eli's heart. He didn't know it yet, but this return would unravel secrets, force him to confront his past, and show him that love, messy, painful, and fierce, could still find a way to mend what was broken. The rain had turned the streets of Coldwater into a mirror, reflecting the dim glow of streetlights and Eli's own haunted expression. He walked beside Callahan, the older man's silence both a comfort and a weight. Eli's mind churned with questions, but the one burning brightest was about Sarah, his sister, the one person who'd watched him leave without a word. Why's Tommy with you? Eli finally asked, his voice rough against the patter of rain. Callahan's steps slowed, his hands buried in his coat pockets. Sarah's in trouble, Eli. She's been in and out of rehab for years. Got mixed up with the wrong crowd after you left. His voice was steady but laced with regret. Tommy's been bouncing between her and foster care. I took him in 6 months ago when she relapsed again. Eli's chest tightened, guilt and anger twisting together. He'd spent years hating Sarah for her silence, for choosing their father's side. But hearing this, knowing she'd fallen apart, made him feel like he'd abandoned her too. Why didn't anyone tell me? Callahan's eyes met his, heavy with something unspoken. Your mom tried. She sent letters, but they came back unopened. Said you didn't want to hear from Coldwater. Eli flinched. He'd moved around too much in those early years, crashing on couches, dodging memories. He hadn't wanted to be found. And my dad? He asked, dreading the answer. Gone, Callahan said simply. Heart attack. 3 years back. Left your mom and Sarah with nothing but debts. The news hit like a punch, but Eli didn't know if it was grief or relief. His father's voice still echoed in his dreams, sharp with disgust. "You're a disgrace." Eli had spent a decade proving him wrong, building a life in Denver bartending, volunteering at an LGBT youth center, finding love and losing it. But standing here, in the town that broke him, he felt 17 again, small and unwanted. They stopped outside Callahan's shop, a narrow storefront with a faded sign, "Callahan's Shoe Repair." The window displayed polished boots and a single rainbow sticker, small but defiant. Eli's throat tightened. That sticker hadn't been there 10 years ago. "Tommy's a good kid," Callahan said, unlocking the door. "But he's angry. Carries a lot of hurt. Like you did." Inside, the shop smelled of leather and polish, warm against the storm outside. Photos lined the walls, Callahan with a younger man, both smiling, their arms around each other. Eli's heart skipped. He'd always wondered about Callahan, the quiet bachelor who'd helped a scared gay kid without hesitation. "Who's that?" Eli asked, nodding at the photos. Callahan's face softened, then hardened. "James. My partner. He passed 5 years ago. Cancer." Eli's breath caught. "I didn't know." "Nobody here did. Not back then." Callahan's voice was low, raw. "We kept it quiet. Coldwater wasn't ready for two men in love. Not in the 90s. Still barely is." Eli wanted to say something. Anything. But the weight of Callahan's loss silenced him. He'd never known the man who'd saved him had been carrying his own secret, his own pain. The door creaked open, and Tommy slipped inside, his hood up, sneakers squeaking on the floor. "Mrs. Hargrove's a jerk," he muttered, tossing his backpack down. His eyes flicked to Eli, wary but curious. "You really my uncle?" "Yeah," Eli said, his voice softer than he meant. "I'm Eli." Tommy studied him, like he was sizing up a stranger. "Mom never talked about you. Said you ran off." The word stung, but Eli nodded. "I didn't run. I was kicked out." Tommy's eyes widened, but he didn't ask why. Instead, he turned to Callahan. "Can I stay here tonight? Don't want to go back to her place." Callahan nodded, his expression gentle. "You know you're always welcome, kid." Eli watched them, the easy trust between them stirring something in his chest. He'd come back for answers, but now he was tangled in a web of family he didn't know and a town that still judged him. He glanced at the rainbow sticker again, its colors a quiet rebellion. Maybe Callahan had been fighting the same war Eli had, just in a different way. "Stay for dinner," Callahan said, breaking the silence. "Tommy's a terrible cook, but I make a mean chili." Tommy snorted, a small smile breaking through his guarded exterior. Eli hesitated, then nodded. "All right." As they moved to the back of the shop, where a small kitchen waited, Eli felt the past and present collide. He didn't know what lay ahead, whether Sarah could be saved, whether Tommy would accept him, or whether Coldwater could ever feel like home again. But for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. The chili simmered on the stove, its spicy warmth filling Callahan's cramped kitchen. Eli sat at the table, watching Tommy devour his bowl like he hadn't eaten in days. Callahan moved with quiet efficiency, refilling glasses and dodging Tommy's attempts to sneak extra cornbread. For a moment, it felt like a family fragile. Unfamiliar, but real. Eli's mind kept drifting to Sarah. He pictured her as she'd been at 15. All laughter and freckles. Before their father's rage turned their home into a battlefield. Where is she now? He asked, his voice low to keep Tommy from hearing. Callahan glanced at the boy, then leaned closer. Halfway house in Cheyenne. She's trying. Eli. But it's rough. Tommy's been with me most of this year. Eli's fingers tightened around his spoon. She ever ask about me? Callahan's pause was answer enough. She's been lost in her own head. Addiction does that. But she kept your old sketchbookist to show Tommy your drawings. The mention of his sketchbook hit hard. Eli hadn't drawn since he left Coldwater. Since the night his father burned his sketches, calling them proof of his sickness. Art had been Eli's escape, his way of dreaming beyond the town's limits. Knowing Sarah kept it felt like a lifeline he didn't deserve. Tommy looked up, catching the tail end of their talk. You draw? He asked, his tone more curious than suspicious now. Used to, Eli said, forcing a smile. Haven't in a while. Mom's got this old book with dragons and stuff. Said it was yours. Tommy's voice was casual, but his eyes searched Eli's face, like he was looking for something to trust. Eli's throat tightened. Yeah, that was mine. Callahan slid a piece of cornbread onto Tommy's plate. Eat up, kid. You've got homework. Tommy groaned, but didn't argue, his focus shifting to the food. Eli watched him, trying to piece together the boy's life. A kid caught between a broken mother and a town that judged too quickly. Eli knew that feeling being trapped, with no one to fight for you. Except he'd had Callahan. And now, so did Tommy. After dinner, Callahan pulled Eli aside while Tommy sprawled on the couch with a math book. There's something else, Callahan said, his voice low. Sarah's got a hearing next month. If she doesn't clean up, Tommy could end up in foster care permanently. Eli's stomach twisted. And if she does, then maybe they get a shot. But it's not looking good. Callahan's eyes were heavy, like he'd carried this worry too long. Tommy doesn't know yet. I didn't want to scare him. Eli nodded, his mind racing. He'd come back thinking he'd just check on Tommy. Maybe stay a week. But now, the idea of leaving felt wrong, like abandoning a piece of himself. What can I do? Callahan studied him, as if weighing his resolve. Stick around. Get to know the kid. He's tough, but he's scared. Needs someone who gets it. Eli's gaze drifted to Tommy, who was doodling in the margins of his notebook, his pencil scratching out shapes that looked suspiciously like dragons. Eli's heart ached. He'd spent years running from Coldwater, from the pain of being unwanted. But Tommy wasn't unwanted not by him. The next morning, Eli woke on Callahan's lumpy couch, the shop quiet except for the hum of a space heater. Tommy was already up, lacing his sneakers by the door. You coming to the fair? The boy asked, not meeting Eli's eyes. Fair. Eli sat up, rubbing sleep from his face. Yeah. The county fair. Mister. He's got a booth. I help out. Tommy's tone was neutral, but there was a challenge in it, like he was testing Eli's commitment. Eli glanced at Callahan, who was sipping coffee in the kitchen. The older man gave a small nod, as if to say, "Go on. Show up for him." "All right," Eli said, standing. "I'm in." The fair was a riot of color and noise. All fried food and carnival lights against the gray Wyoming sky. Callahan's booth was modest. A table of polished shoes and leather goods. The rainbow sticker proudly displayed. Eli helped Tommy set up. Their movements awkward but cooperative. Townsfolk passed by, some nodding at Callahan, others whispering when they saw Eli. Mrs. Hargrove appeared, her gaze sharp as ever. "Didn't expect to see you here, Eli Parker," she said, her voice loud enough to draw eyes. "Thought you'd left this town for good." Eli's jaw clenched, but Tommy stepped forward, his voice steady. "He's with us. Got a problem with that." The crowd hushed, and Mrs. Hargrove's face reddened. She muttered something about manners and stormed off. Eli looked at Tommy, surprised by the kid's fire. "Thanks," he said quietly. Tommy shrugged, but a small smile tugged at his lips. "She's always like that. Don't let her get to you." For the first time, Eli felt a spark of connection with his nephew. Maybe they weren't so different, two outsiders, fighting to be seen. As the fair buzzed around them, Eli realized he wasn't just here for answers anymore. He was here to stay, at least for now. The county fair's lights cast a warm glow over the crowd, but Eli felt the chill of old wounds as eyes lingered on him. He stood at Callahan's booth, handing Tommy a stack of leather belts to arrange, their hands brushing briefly. The kid's small act of defiance against Mrs. Hargrove had shifted something in Ellie, a flicker of hope that he could build something with Tommy. Maybe even heal a piece of himself. As the afternoon wore on, the fair grew rowdier. Kids screaming on rides. Couples laughing over cotton candy. Eli caught snippets of conversation gossip about his return. About Callahan's strange ways. About Tommy's troubled mother. Coldwater hadn't changed. It still chewed up anyone who didn't fit its mold. Callahan nudged Eli, pointing to a group of teens eyeing the booth. "Go talk to them. Tommy's friends. They're good kids." Eli hesitated. He wasn't sure he was ready to play uncle, let alone face a pack of 12-year-olds who might have heard the town's version of his story. But Tommy was already waving them over, his face lighting up in a way Eli hadn't seen yet. "Hey, this is my uncle," Tommy said, his voice casual but proud. "He's from Denver." The teens, a mix of boys and girls with braces and awkward energy, nodded. Curious but not hostile. One girl, with pink streaks in her hair, grinned. "You really get kicked out for being gay?" she asked, blunt but not cruel. Eli froze, his pulse spiking. Tommy's eyes widened, and he shot the girl a look. "Lila, come on." "It's okay," Eli said, forcing his voice steady. "Yeah, I did. Long time ago." Lila's eyes softened. "That sucks. My cousin's gay. He's cool." The simple acceptance caught Eli off guard. A crack in Coldwater's armor he hadn't expected. He glanced at Tommy, who looked relieved, maybe even a little proud. "Thanks," Eli said, managing a smile. "Your cousin sounds all right." The teens wandered off, and Tommy busied himself rearranging the booth, avoiding Eli's gaze. Sorry about Lila. She talks too much. Nah, she's fine, Eli said. You've got good friends. Tommy shrugged, but his shoulders relaxed. Eli felt a surge of protectiveness. This kid was navigating a world that could be as cruel as it had been to Eli. Yet he was still open, still fighting. Later, as the fair wound down, Callahan pulled Eli aside. There's something you need to know about Tommy, he said, his voice low. He's been getting into fights at school. Nothing serious, but he's got a temper. Thinks he has to prove himself. Eli's heart sank. Because of Sarah? Partly. And this town doesn't make it easy for a kid like him different. Sensitive. He's got your artist soul. You know. Callahan's eyes held a quiet challenge. He could use someone who understands. Eli nodded, the weight of responsibility settling in. He wasn't just here to check on Tommy. He was here to show up. To be the person he'd needed at that age. That night, back at the shop, Tommy pulled out Eli's old sketchbook. Its pages yellowed but intact. Mom gave me this, he said, handing it to Eli. Said it was yours. Eli's fingers trembled as he opened it. Dragons. Forests. Faces his teenage dreams stared back at him. Vivid and raw. One sketch showed a boy with wings, soaring above a town that looked like cold water. He'd drawn it the night before his father found out. Before everything fell apart. You're good, Tommy said, his voice soft. Why'd you stop? Eli swallowed hard. Didn't think I had a reason to keep going. Tommy looked at him, his green eyes steady. You should start again. For you. The words hit like a spark, igniting something Eli thought he'd lost. He ruffled Tommy's hair, earning a playful scowl. Maybe I will. Kid. As Tommy headed to bed, Eli sat with the sketchbook, tracing the lines of his old dreams. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving a clear sky. For the first time, Coldwater didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a place where he could fight for Tommy, for Sarah, for himself. But the fight was just beginning, and the secrets this town held were far from unraveled. Eli woke to the sound of Tommy's sneakers squeaking across the shop's floor. The boy already up and sorting leather scraps. The sketchbook lay open on the table, Eli's old drawings catching the morning light. He hadn't slept much. His mind tangled with memories and the weight of Callahan's words about Tommy's fights. He wanted to help, but he barely knew how to navigate his own return, let alone guide a kid through this town's judgment. At breakfast, Callahan slid a plate of eggs toward Eli. You're sticking around, right? He asked, his tone casual but pointed. Eli glanced at Tommy, who was pretending not to listen. For now, he said. Got some things to figure out. Tommy's fork paused midair. You gonna see Mom? The question hung heavy. Eli hadn't planned to face Sarah. Not yet. The hurt of her silence still lingered. But Tommy's hopeful eyes made it impossible to dodge. Yeah, Eli said. I'll go see her. Callahan gave him the address of the halfway house in Cheyenne. A 2-hour drive. Eli borrowed Callahan's old pickup, the engine rattling like it might give up halfway. The road stretched wide and empty, Wyoming's plains blurring past as Eli's thoughts churned. What would he say to Sarah? Could he forgive her for choosing their father over him? And what did Tommy need from him, a stranger who shared his blood but not his life? Cheyenne was gray and quiet when Eli arrived. The halfway house was a squat brick building, its windows smudged with time. Inside, the air smelled of bleach and regret. Sarah sat in a common room, her hair dull, her frame thinner than Eli remembered. But her eyes, those green eyes, just like Tommy, slid up when she saw him. Eli, she whispered, standing. For a moment, they just stared, 10 years of silence stretching between them. Then she rushed forward, wrapping him in a hug that felt both desperate and fragile. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I should have fought for you. I was scared. Eli's throat burned. He wanted to be angry, to demand why she'd let him go. But her trembling hands and hollow cheeks told a story of their own. I'm here now, he said, the words rough but honest. They sat, and Sarah spilled her truth: years of addiction, bad choices, losing Tommy to foster care. I kept your sketchbook, she said, tears falling. It was all I had of you. Eli's chest ached. He'd spent so long hating her. But now he saw a sister who'd been broken by the same town, the same father. Tommy's with Callahan, he said. He's safe. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. He's a good man. Callahan always was. But Tommy, he's angry. Thinks I don't love him. He knows you do, Eli said, though he wasn't sure. He's just hurting. She reached for his hand. Will you stay? For him. Eli didn't answer right away. He wanted a promise. But Coldwater's weight pressed on him, and he wasn't sure he could carry it. I'll try, he said finally. Back in Coldwater, Eli found Tommy at the shop, sketching in the margins of his homework. The boy looked up, hopeful but guarded. How's Mom? She's fighting, Eli said. She loves you, kid. Tommy's jaw tightened, but he nodded. You gonna leave again? The question cut deep. Eli thought of Denver, his life there, free, but lonely. Then he thought of Callahan, polishing shoes with quiet pride, and Tommy, carrying the same fire Eli once had. Not yet, he said. Got some dragons to draw. Tommy's small smile was a victory. That night, Eli picked up a pencil, sketching beside his nephew. The lines came slowly, but they felt like a start. Coldwater was still a battleground. But for the first time, Eli felt ready to fight, not just for himself, but for the family he was beginning to reclaim. Eli's pencil scratched across the page, a dragon taking shape under his hand for the first time in years. Tommy sat beside him, sketching his own version, their silence comfortable but charged with unspoken questions. Callahan watched from the counter, his eyes soft with something like pride. The shop felt like a refuge, a pocket of warmth against Coldwater's cold judgment. But the refuge didn't last. A sharp knock at the door broke the quiet, and Mrs. Hargrove's voice followed. Mr. Callahan, open up. We need to talk. Eli's stomach twisted. Callahan sighed, setting down his rag and opening the door. Mrs. Hargrove stood with two other women, their faces tight with purpose. This is about the boy, she said, her eyes flicking to Tommy. And him. She nodded at Eli, her disdain clear. What's this about? Marjorie. Callahan's tone was calm but firm. We've heard things, she said, her voice loud enough to carry. About Eli's lifestyle. And now he's around Tommy. This town won't stand for it. Eli's blood ran hot. He stood, stepping between Tommy and the women. You got a problem with me. Say it to my face. Mrs. Hargrove's lips thinned. You're a bad influence. Tommy's already troubled. And you being here parading your choice sits not right. Tommy's chair scraped back. He's my uncle. He snapped, his voice shaking with anger. You don't get to say who he is. The women gasped. But Callahan raised a hand, silencing them. Marjorie, you've said your piece. Now leave my shop. She hesitated, then turned, muttering about decency as she left. Eli's heart pounded, the old shame clawing at him. But Tommy's defiance and Callahan's steady support anchored him. They'll keep coming, Callahan said once the door closed. Always do. Eli nodded, his jaw tight. I'm not running this time. Tommy looked at him, his eyes fierce. Good. 'Cause I need you here. The words hit harder than Eli expected. He ruffled Tommy's hair, earning a half-hearted swat. I'm not going anywhere, kid. The next day, Eli drove to Cheyenne again, needing to see Sarah, to tell her about Tommy's fire and the town's venom. She looked better this time, her eyes clearer. But worry creased her face as Eli recounted the confrontation. They'll never change, she said, her voice bitter. They judged you. Now they're judging Tommy. I can't lose him. Eli. You won't, he promised, the words coming before he could think. I'll fight for him. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I should have fought for you. Eli squeezed her hand. You're fighting now. That's enough. Back in Coldwater, Eli threw himself into helping Callahan at the shop, teaching Tommy how to polish leather and sharing stories of Denver's vibrant queer community. Tommy listened, wide-eyed, asking questions about pride parades and safe spaces, things Coldwater couldn't offer. Eli saw himself in the boy's hunger for a world that accepted him, even if he didn't yet know why he felt different. One evening, as they closed the shop, Tommy hesitated, his sketchbook clutched tight. Eli, do you think it's okay to be different? Like, really different? Eli's heart stopped. He remembered asking himself that question at Tommy's age, alone and terrified. Yeah, kid, he said, his voice thick. It's more than okay. It's who you are. Tommy nodded, his expression unreadable. Eli didn't push, but he felt a shift of trust growing between them. Fragile but real. Coldwater's judgment loomed, but Eli was done hiding. He'd fight for Tommy, for Sarah, for the life they all deserved. And maybe, just maybe, he'd find a way to make this town see them for who they were. The days in Coldwater settled into a rhythm: mornings at the shop, afternoons with Tommy, evenings sketching or talking with Callahan about James, about surviving in a town that didn't understand. Eli felt the pull of family, but the town's hostility simmered, waiting to boil over. Mrs. Hargrove's whispers had spread, and Eli noticed more sidelong glances, more hushed conversations when he passed. One afternoon, Tommy came home from school with a split lip, his eyes blazing. Some kid said stuff, he muttered, tossing his backpack down. About you. About me. Eli's blood boiled. What did they say? Tommy shrugged, but his fists clenched. Called you a freak. Said I'm gonna be like you. The words cut, but not for Eli's sake for Tommy's. You tell anyone. Mister. C knows. He's talking to the principal. Tommy's voice was small, vulnerable. I hit him back. Eli. I had to. Eli knelt, meeting Tommy's eyes. You don't have to fight their battles. Kid. You're better than that. Tommy's lip trembled. But what if they're right? What if I am, like you? The question hung heavy, raw with fear and hope. Eli's heart ached, remembering his own terror at that age. The shame cold water drilled into him. If you are, he said softly, it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of. And I'll be here, no matter what. Tommy nodded, tears brimming but unshed. Eli pulled him into a hug, feeling the boy's small frame shake. For the first time, Eli wasn't just Tommy's uncle, he was his protector, his ally. Callahan returned, his face grim. School's suspending the other kids, but they're blaming Tommy. And you. Eli's jaw tightened. Let them. I'm not leaving. That night, Eli called a friend in Denver, a lawyer who worked with LGBT youth. I need advice, he said, explaining Tommy's situation. Sarah's hearing. The town's hostility. Can I fight for custody if it comes to that? The lawyer's voice was steady. It's tough, but possible. You'd need to prove stability. Show you're what's best for him. This town won't make it easy. Eli hung up, his resolve hardening. He'd spent years running from Coldwater's judgment, but now he'd fight for Tommy, for the family he was rebuilding. The next day, Eli took Tommy to the diner, determined to show the town they weren't hiding. The stares followed, but Tommy held his head high, mirroring Eli's defiance. Callahan joined them, his rainbow sticker pinned to his jacket, a quiet challenge to anyone watching. As they ate, a man approached Pastor Daniels, younger than Eli expected, with kind eyes. Heard about you, Eli, he said. I'm sorry for what you went through. This town's changing, but it's slow. Eli braced for a sermon, but the pastor smiled. I'm starting a youth group open to everyone. No judgment. Tommy's welcome. So are you. Tommy's eyes lit up, and Eli felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Coldwater wasn't all lost. Maybe there were allies here, small but growing. That evening, Eli sketched with Tommy. Their dragons fiercer now, wings spread wide. He saw strength in the boy, a spark that could outshine the town's shadows. Sarah's hearing was approaching, and with it, the chance to bring her home. But whatever happened, Eli knew one thing. He was done running. He'd fight for this family, for this town, for the love they all deserved. The morning of Sarah's hearing dawned cold, the Wyoming sky heavy with clouds. Eli drove to Cheyenne with Tommy in the passenger seat, the boy quiet but clutching Eli's sketchbook like a talisman. Callahan stayed behind, promising to keep the shop running, his steady presence a reminder that they weren't alone. In the courthouse, Sarah looked stronger, her eyes clear but nervous. She hugged Tommy tightly. Whispering apologies he accepted with a shy nod. Eli sat beside them, his heart pounding as the judge reviewed Sarah's case for progress in rehab, her commitment to recovery. The lawyer Eli had contacted presented a plan. Sarah would move in with Callahan, with Eli as support, to prove they could provide a stable home for Tommy. Mrs. Hargrove was there, representing concerned citizens. She argued Tommy needed a traditional home, her words dripping with disdain for Eli's influence. But Pastor Daniel spoke up, vouching for Eli and Callahan, calling them pillars of the community. The room hushed as he described the youth group, the safe space he was building. Proof Coldwater was changing, however slowly. The judge's voice was calm but firm. Ms. Parker, you've made progress, but stability is key. I'm granting temporary custody to Mr. Callahan, with Mr. Parker as co-guardian, pending further review. Tommy's hand found Eli's, squeezing tight. Sarah's tears fell, but she smiled, a spark of hope in her eyes. They weren't whole yet, but they were together. Back in Coldwater, Eli moved into Callahan's spare room, determined to make it work. He took Tommy to school, helped Sarah settle in, and sketched late into the night, his art alive again. The town still whispered, but Pastor Daniel's youth group grew, and Tommy found a place there, his confidence blooming. One evening, Eli found Callahan polishing Tommy's sneakers, the same quiet care he'd shown years ago. You saved me back then, Eli said, his voice thick. Now you're saving him. Callahan shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. You're saving each other, Eli. And maybe this town too. Eli looked at the rainbow sticker on the shop's window, its colors brighter now. He thought of James, of Sarah's fight, of Tommy's courage. Love hadn't been easy in Coldwater, but it was fierce, unyielding. Eli had returned to face his past, but he'd found a Futuria family, a purpose, a home. As he sketched with Tommy that night, their dragons soaring across the page, Eli knew he'd never leave again. Coldwater had tried to break him, but love had brought him back. And in its messy, beautiful way, it had made them all whole.